Should I reduce my 401k contributions to pay off a loan with greater than 8% interest? Wow, that's pretty hefty. Now, before we dive in, just a quick reminder. This video is for informational and entertainment purposes only, and should not be considered financial advice. Our full disclaimer is shown here and on our website. Hello everyone, and welcome to another episode of Finance with Anthony. So today we're actually going to be covering one big topic, which is on everyone's mind. Housing. So it looks like everyone has the housing bug. So let's dive right into some stories here on the personal finance Reddit and see what the buzz is all about. So this first one is, live in inherited house I can't afford. My grandmother passed 3 years ago and left the house to my mom. I live in the house with her and split the bills, but she also passed a year later. I've been working my ass off to pay the bills and mortgage, but I have a semi-low paying job with no degree. I make roughly $36,000 a year before taxes, working a full-time job and a part-time job once or twice a week. The mortgage is $1,100 with property taxes and insurance rising every year, plus at least $1,000 in other bills, leaving not much left for groceries, gas, car maintenance. The tricky part is that the house isn't in my name. My grandmother's will states that the house should be left to me if anything were to happen to my mom, but I'm in the process of trying to go through probate. I don't have money for a lawyer and no family in my state to help me. I really want to sell it, but I'm afraid I won't be able to ever afford a house in the future. I have a long-term, semi-long distance GF that lives an hour and a half away, but she has a career in her city that she just got a promotion at. So asking her to drop all of that isn't feasible. I feel like I'm drowning. Any advice would be helpful on what to do. So, this is actually, very common. It's actually very common, especially when people inherit a property, especially a house in this case, that sometimes the property taxes, sometimes even if the mortgage is paid off, people think, oh yeah, if you just paid the property taxes and the insurance and, the very basics, depending on the cost of living in that area, property taxes might have actually shot up like crazy because there's probably an assessment each year. The area's gotten a little bit nicer, so that with that, property taxes go up, insurance goes up. So even if originally maybe the house wasn't paying much, this is post-mortgage, it still might actually, outpace the income of someone who just recently inherited the property. So that's very common, and there's people that have lost homes because of the high property taxes and the insurance. So now, what can you do in these kind of situations? So a very common practice for many people is to do something called house hacking. And house hacking, what that means is that you actually rent part of your home to other people. Usually you rent it out by room. I've heard cases where people even renovate their garage into a room. It's you can do a lot of stuff in a house. So, as long as, of course, you make sure you pull the right permits and all that fun stuff. But overall, you could do something called house hacking. And, funny enough, I do that in my own home where I actually have a roommate and, they pay me a monthly rent. Usually I use that against my utilities, pay off a little bit of my principal of my loan. So it's very common for people to do this, especially if you have enough rooms to actually have roommates. So if, for example, you have maybe a 3-bedroom house and you're comfortable renting 2 of the rooms, depending on your area, you could actually get between $800 to $1,500 a month per room. So essentially, that's a pretty big bonus, especially for someone, for example, who's paying $1,100. In this case, if you have 2 rooms to rent, and even if you just rent it for $700 or $800, you're effectively paying off your mortgage. And then you can focus on other aspects of the house. So it's just the maintenance fees, the utilities, all these other items that you still have to pay. And then it'll make it a lot easier for you to actually continue to live in your home. Even though, as we know, sometimes having roommates won't be as comfortable as you're living on your own. But look at it this way. Once you pay off your house, your wallet will thank you. You're going to feel a lot better. And if it works out and you enjoy actually having your roommates in your house, you can keep having them when you actually pay your mortgage and actually just have more money in your bank. So this is my advice, and hopefully this helps out. Helped my house help start saving, and what happened next truly humbled me. A few months ago, I sat down with the lady who helped us at home and asked if she had a bank account. She didn't. No savings, no UPI, no idea how it all worked, so I offered to help.
We got her a basic savings account, showed her how to use UPI, and started a very small habit, saving 500 euros every month. 3 months later, I showed her the balance. She just stared at it, smiled wide, and then tears started rolling down her cheeks. She never thought she could have money like that. It wasn't a lot, but to her, it meant security, a future, maybe just a little peace of mind. This reminded me that personal finance isn't always about big investments or stock market wins. Sometimes it's just about empowering someone with the basics.
So let's dive right into this. So it's actually very key to understand that the one thing that sometimes is holding us back is the fact that we're always comparing ourselves to others. For example, when people think about their future, they're like, oh, I don't have as much investments as so and so. I don't have a house like so and so. I don't have all of these aspects that would present themselves as someone who's really successful and knows what they're doing. Now, of course, all of these things, if you have them, usually it means that you do know what you're doing and you're doing a great job. However, remember, the journey starts with the first step. So think about that. Just because you can't have the big money in your bank right away doesn't mean you can't build it over time. Sometimes it just takes baby steps, where there's like depositing $50 or $100 a week into the account, just so you can see the balance grow. Sometimes the satisfaction of seeing the balance in your bank grow means the world to you, because you're seeing some progress. We as humans want to see progress in our lives. So even seeing like small amounts of money growing into larger amounts of money is so important overall. So this is something that once you have the baby steps in, then you can start your investments. You can start your retirement accounts. You can start your investment accounts. You can start, your housing fund. All of these things come with time, but it takes the first step to actually make it happen. So let's dive right into the next story now. I have the money to pay my taxes, but I lose my house much quicker. I'm 72. I bought 2 expensive houses last year for my income, I think California, CA, but was okay paying the mortgage until I got fired this week. Oh. My retirement is $5K a month instead of the $10K a month I was making. My mortgage is $6K a month. Long story, bad mistake. Plus $2.5K Social Security. Monthly expenses are $10K a month, plus things like the roof/HVAC and more maintenance costs. I got lucky for the first time paying the market, but the taxes are very high. I put all my profits, $240 as a down payment for this house, so they could sell my house. I have enough money in the bank, $136,000, but I prefer they put a lien on my house so I can use that money to stay in the house over a year or two longer. Would they just take it out of the bank account before they put a lien on the house? With that much home equity, they'll take it out of the bank account or sell the house. Doesn't matter what my age is. I rate it if it's your primary residence, they will work with you, especially if you're older. With much less income, I won't be able to qualify for a house in the town I live in. Will they force a senior couple to move? Me and the wife? I think I'm fucked. So, this is a very tricky situation, in the sense of like, when you're thinking about buying a home, you have to think about this. Usually, in most cases, you don't want your debt to income ratio to be too far off. And what I mean by that is, if your mortgage is $5,000 and you're making $10K, that's already 50%. 50% of your income going straight to the mortgage. So in this case, it's actually $6K for one. Actually, $6K. So 60% of his income, from the job, was going to the mortgage. That's a really high number. In most cases, the higher you go, the riskier it is if you lose your job. So I would say he does have other incomes like Social Security and I think retirement. Yeah, so he gets around 7.5K a month. So how do you make up for the remainder? So depending on like the type of investment you have, this is your option. So if you have like a primary residence, which in this case it looks like he does have, he could rent some parts of his house to other people. That will help him at least pay off some of the kind of the shortfall. Especially in California. If this is in California, I'm sure for a room over there will probably, especially in a nice area, you could probably get $1,500 a month for a room. So if you have multiple rooms you can rent, that could help out as long as you're comfortable with that. And then on top of that, even then if you don't have your primary gig anymore, there is a lot of places that will still hire you on an hourly basis. It won't be as high as what he was making before, but at least you can also supplement it that way too. So on top of like having roommates, which I know seems uncomfortable, you can also have like sadly a lower paying job as well, which will, between those two combined, should at least help save the home, so God forbid, you won't be homeless. So this is my advice, and hopefully this helps out a bit. Hello everyone, my name is Anthony and I'm the host of TheLostSanctuary. I hope you've been enjoying our content so far, and if you have, please feel free to like and subscribe. Also, we have our website up here, and we also have some socials down here, and as always, leave your comments down below.
So the next story is, will we greatly benefit from living in a paid-off home long-term, 30 plus years? I hear how before you need to live in your home about 4 to 5 years to break even on all costs associated with moving. And now it's 8 years or something. Just wondering. If one planned to live in their home indefinitely, we've been here for 11 years, absolutely no plans to really ever move, how big of a benefit would you say that would be to their financial benefit? Not even sure there's an answer to quantify this. We paid the house off in year 7 and have only paid $320 a month between property tax, HOA, and insurance. Since I remember my first intro to personal finance on Reddit, people were asking me what the best advice they ever got. And I remember seeing a comment how someone was told the best thing they could do is live in the same house their whole life without moving, assuming no force reasons to move out, of course. We are also 39, so have plenty of years left to benefit from a paid off home.
So I'm going to be 100% transparent with everyone. I am I feel that having a paid off home is not only good financially, at least for me, but think about the mental sanity you save yourself, not having to think about, God forbid, what if I lose my job? What if my income goes down? What if this? What if that? The second you lose your job, God forbid, the bank will come after you like a pack of wild animals to try to take your home away from you. So I am someone who essentially won't try to get into another house until my prior house has been pretty much almost or fully paid off. Because overall, I do want to have the peace of mind of, hey, if something were to happen with me, God forbid, it's not just your job. Like, God forbid, sometimes, we get sick, something happens, accidents happen, things happen. Life is unforgivable. Life can be, all over the place. But overall, we try to do the best we can. So overall, it's always good to try to have a backup plan. So if God forbid something were to happen to you, even if your house is paid off, then that'll make it easier, not just for yourself if something were to happen, like if you need to live off disability benefits or anything like that, but also for the person who might inherit the house as well. Usually it's easier for them to take it over instead of having to take on a mortgage, especially how mortgages right now are like 6.5% to 7%, which is crazy. It makes it a lot more difficult for them to pay it off. So I completely agree that having a paid off house is the best. So let's move on to the next question. Should I reduce my 401k contributions to pay off a loan with greater than 8% interest? Wow, that's pretty hefty. Hi there, thanks in advance for your advice. Here are my circumstances. I'm 35 and married with 3 kids. 2 stepkids, 1 bio kid. Before kids, my husband and I both had an opportunity to save enough money to invest. We're now in a period of life where we aren't saving any money, child support, daycare costs, kids expense, etc. This period of life is temporary and we can manage. We have 3 months of emergency savings in a savings account. We each have about $150K in retirement money. We each contribute about 10% of our income to retirement. And additionally, we have about $145K in investments, stocks, mutual funds, etc. However, we do have a loan for a necessary home rental. It's about $15K and 8.5% interest. We are scraping by making the monthly payments for this 20-year loan. The only way we could pay it faster is by either pulling money for our investment accounts, which I'm confused about if we should do given the market. Maybe we should. Or reducing our retirement payments to have more monthly cash available to pay down faster. Any advice appreciated. I know that we are incredibly lucky. Thank you. So I would say, this is just my personal advice, is that if you do have a decent emergency fund, usually I prefer 6 months, but you do have at least 3 months, which is great. Then you could think about, hey, what debts do I have outstanding? So I would say I prefer paying off debts unless they're like super low interest debts, but in your case it's pretty high interest debt. So you got to think about this. Paying off a high interest debt, which is at 8.5%, every time you pay that off, it's essentially like a return. It's an 8.5% return on your money because essentially you're saving yourselves 8.5% of interest every time you make payments on that principal. Now, of course, you can do this temporarily where you halt your the payments towards your retirement accounts, but that doesn't mean that the second you pay off that debt, you got to continue putting money into that investment account. Because, the thing about, debts, they come and go, thankfully. It's good. You make sure you gotta get them out the way. But retirement accounts are supposed to stay with you forever. Hoping that a retirement account will stay with you until, God forbid, you're in the retirement age and then you have to live another 20-30s without income. That retirement account is going to be your partner in crime, and you need that puppy. So this is my advice. Just make sure you pay off your debt first, especially while you're still young. Then pump into that retirement account, or get yourself some assets, either houses or whatever you're thinking about. Just get some assets under your belt. Get those investments all pumped up, and yeah, you'll be all set. Alrighty, let's move on to the next one. Gave out almost everything to scammer. Oh man. I stupidly just got scammed by a fake housing listing for rent and gave them my SSN, my social security number, phone number, address, photos of my ID, and my face. What the hell should I do? Am I screwed forever? I don't have a credit card or any bills in my name yet, at least. Oh my gosh, this is actually a really tough one. And this actually happens, more often than we think. There's a lot of people out there who have like fake listings out there. They have, job applications, rental listings. There's so many people out there trying to get your information because your information is so valuable. It's not just valuable to the person who you gave it to, but even on the black market, people love these kinds of information, social security numbers, emails, everything under the sun. They love that stuff. So what do you do if something, God forbid, did happen? So my biggest advice would be to do something called a credit freeze. And what is a credit freeze? A credit freeze basically just means you go to like Experian, TransUnion, and a lot of these bigger ones. Usually it's better to just go to all four of them and just, actually freeze your accounts across everything. So essentially freeze your credit so that way people can't open up credit lines in your name. That's not what you want. You don't want people opening up credit lines in your name because that could have drastic effects on your life. You're gonna start, having creditors on your butt. Your credit score is gonna get ruined. You're not gonna be able to apply for any loans in the future if you want to buy a house, or even if you do want to get a credit card or a loan or anything. That puppy needs to be secure. So make sure you do a credit freeze, and yeah, make sure you also change any passwords. You gotta change a lot of stuff. Basically, you gotta make sure you change your bank routing, your bank accounts, your debit card numbers. Change your passwords. Try to enable even like two-factor authentication, multi-factor authentication. You really, really, really need to button up all these items, especially for the next couple of years. I would say once you're hopefully things lighten up a little bit and you don't see as much activity on these kinds of things, then maybe you can start like pulling back and actually starting to get your life back together. So wishing you all the best. Alrighty, and that is going to be Finance with Anthony episode 20. We're already at the 20 episode mark. I want to thank everyone for their support, and I want everyone out there to have a blessed day. Adios, and wishing you guys all the best. Keep doing what you're doing. You're doing an amazing job, and I'm wishing everyone out there all the best. Alright, until next time, adios.